I've been asked to explain what are toxic assets anyways, and where do they come from? And of course they came from the famous subprime mortgages. And you know the subprime mortgages were mortgages where people asked you, what your income was rather than verifying it with a W-2. And they sort of said this is the value of the property, and maybe they did an appraisal, but it was sort of a drive-by. And then that was the basis of a mortgage that was processed by a mortgage broker who was not at a bank, because 75% of these mortgages were developed outside the banking regulatory system. I have to make that point. And ultimately ended up on Wall Street, having been financed by investment banks and things of that nature. And so the toxic asset is referring to some of the mortgages that were directly done on an as-stated basis and held in the bank. Some of them, most of them, ended up as securities, backing up securities. And there was billions of dollars of those. But now pension funds and bank investment portfolios and virtually everybody in the world own these assets that were backed by subprime mortgages. And when the property values started to disappear because the bubble busted in Florida and California and Arizona, just a few states, not all states, then the value of these mortgages were held in question. And when there is a question in the market gets panicky and maybe attributes near zero to that, and all of a sudden these assets had to be marked down. And when they are marked down, they are charged against reserves that financial and investment firms maintain for such calamities. But this was in such volume that soon the reserves were used up, and they had to charge against capital. And capital is what the company owns as opposed to what they owe. It's sort of like equity in your home, same idea, except this is a corporation. And then the stock of that company started to fall. So what we have seen, as you know, is the stock market went from somewhere around 14,000 of the Dow, and actually got down to 6,500, which was breathtaking. And many of the major banks are now trading for a few dollars when they, a year ago, were trading for $55 or $60. So it's been quite a calamity. And the idea was to somehow manage or get rid of or clear the decks, and that's where the government came in. The so-called solution for this dilemma was to remove the toxic assets from the portfolios of people who held them, or the banks that held them. And the idea was, if you took the TARP assets off the books, then you could restore the capital that was absorbed in charging them down to that 35 cents. And the idea that private capital, that is ordinary investors, and frankly investors in the stock market are better termed speculators. But when you're in trouble here and you want somebody to buy a discounted asset, speculators are good because they come in and feed on the bottom. And in any event, that was the idea, to buy the assets and then to restore the capital of banks by having private investment see that, oh, okay, we've taken care of the problem. Now the bank is clean. It's going to be lending and making money again. And that sort of idea worked with the thrift crisis some 15 years ago at the end of the 80s, early 90s. So why don't we do that? The problem was, human nature being what it is, and the circumstances being what they were, the people didn't come to this party. So the question is, where are the loans? There is an inherent lag in monetary policy of anywhere from 12 to 18 months. And by that I mean when we were setting interest rates to either stimulate or cool down the economy, we had to look and project where the economy would be in 18 months and then fashion a remedy to raise or lower interest rates so that they would take effect in 18 months. So this is a little bit like walking down the street and looking around the first corner, but also having to look around the second corner. So that's where it moves from a science to an art. when you move around to look around the second corner. So why is this such a mystery? If you're going to have a baby, you probably talk about having a baby for 9 months, and then it takes 9 months to have a baby. Everybody's got a lot of time to get ready for that, but why would you think that it would take less than 18 months to fix the economy, and it takes 18 months to commit yourself to having another being that's going to occupy all of your attention for the next 3 to 5 years? So as you can see, that this comes back to a set of values and principles that we have held consistently over the decades, indeed the century, which is a dedication to the community mission, which is the recycling of deposits and loans within the community, with resources drawn from the community in accord with the priorities of the community, because we live, work, and play here together, all of us. This is our money collectively. Our objective is to optimize our earnings. Virtually every other bank is going for maximizing the earnings. And the difference is we have a balanced view between our four constituents, which includes the community on the one hand, the shareholder on the other. To the extent that we contribute to the community, it obviously is at the expense of the shareholder, but it's also very important for us all to contribute to the community to build it. And then we have our colleagues and customers that form the other two constituents. That's a balanced view. We make enough money to be able to have enough retained earnings. We grow it to share it with our owners, 1,200 shareholders, 85% of whom live in the 4 zip code area here. So the people that own this bank have a stake in its performance because they work, live, and play here too. So they not only enjoy the financial performance, but they enjoy the fact that they are owners of a successful company. And this has been going on for decades. And finally, banks have investment portfolios, but banks should use those investment portfolios as we do for liquidity purposes. We never lost sight of the fundamentals. I think there are hundreds of banking institutions that have reacquainted themselves with these time-honored principles. And on one hand, it's not rocket science, but it is a bit of a mystery why so many people lost sight of what really makes this tick.